And welcome everybody to another episode of Pulse of Fins Nation. I'm your host Louis Sung. I'm joined by Eric Whitekey, who is he's incognito right now. So I still appreciate him coming on to join us for this show. How are you today, sir?
I should have just committed to the bit and gone full voice changer and everything at this point. But I am happy to be here. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing all right. We got some stuff to talk about. I actually joined the guys from the Inside Leverage crew yesterday, and we talked about some good stuff. I'll probably revisit some of that stuff today as well. Also, the Miami Dolphins actually apparently there are hundreds of reports, it feels like at this point, that this has happened. So now the Dolphins, I don't think have officially recognized it themselves. Maybe they're still waiting to put ink to paper, as it were. But the former New York Jets and New Orleans Saints safety Marcus Maye is going to be joining the Miami Dolphins, most likely as a support player. So we shall see where that goes. We'll talk a little bit about him, what he brings to the table, and what does this eliminate as far as the Miami Dolphins being interested in looking at other people. So we'll go ahead and get into all that. But as always, we have to make sure that this show is brought to you by our great friends over at PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is a revolutionary fantasy platform where you can pick up to 4 different players if you're in Miami, 6 everywhere else across professional sports leagues. Whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each, it's up to you to decide. And today, by the way, is Taco Tuesday. Everybody is eligible for Taco Tuesday. They give you discounted props that you can go ahead and check. All you have to do is just choose whether you think your chosen player will get more or less than their projected stat. They give you, again, they have free squares on Flex Friday and stuff like that. There's all sorts of really cool stuff that Prize Picks has to offer. So if you haven't already done so and you've heard us do it many times, don't wait anymore. Use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your deposit when you sign up. Again, it is legal again in South Florida, so you are doing yourself a disservice if you don't sign up for Prize Picks and get that free $100 deposit. All right. So the other folks that we got to talk about, jerseys305.com. We're going to play the video for you guys. If you're looking for vintage jerseys, make sure that you check them out.
Hey, it's Ethan Skolnick for the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We've got a great new sponsor that fits with us perfectly. It's called jerseys305.com. That's jerseys305.com. This is your home for dead stock and vintage jerseys from the Heat, Panthers, Dolphins, Marlins, and the other local teams. Their mission was born from a passion for wearing jerseys of the old styles and the past players. Jerseys 305 aims to make every fan stand out from the crowd with unique pieces that you don't commonly see anymore. Maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, but not today. And Jerseys 305 was created by the fans, for the fans. They're diehards just like you. In fact, they're probably listening to this episode right now. So check them out, Jerseys 305, their partnership with 5 Reasons Sports, celebrating with a 10% discount on the next purchase using the code 5 at checkout. Unlock your exclusive savings on the entire vintage collection.
And again, that's jerseys305.com. You get 10% off when you make your order and when you use the promo code 5 when you do so. All right, so let's just briefly get into the Marcus Maye situation. Again, the Miami Dolphins have apparently, according to all these reports, have agreed to terms with the veteran safety. He's 31 years of age. He spent his first 5 seasons with the Jets after they made him a second-round pick in 2017, and then he signed in 2022, he signed a 3-year, $22.5 million contract with the Saints, but ended up being hurt a lot. He played in 17 games. He missed also 17 games. So the fact that the Saints decided to cut ties with him is not entirely surprising. There's a whole bunch of stuff here as far as what it is that he can bring to the table. He does have a lot of talent. Let's make no mistake about this. In fact, if you haven't checked out OnlyFins, which by the way, it's only $3 a month to get the best Dolphins talk in the world, as far as I'm concerned, you can talk about these plays in a safe, basically safe space. I don't like to use the word safe space, but basically it's a safe space for Miami Dolphins fans to be able to learn, get an idea of what's going on in the real world of the Miami Dolphins, some behind the scenes stuff that you're never going to get on the world of Twitter. So all that stuff is available to you if you do that, including Alfredo Arteaga, who's of the podcast. He was actually highlighting how he was able to take on DeAndre Hopkins, Marcus Maye did, and made Ryan Tannehill absolutely lose his mind because he just did not recognize what Marcus Maye was doing. He jumped the route and just took off like a shot. So it was a thing of beauty. If you watch the highlight, you can go check that out. It was against the Tennessee Titans a couple years ago. So now the Dolphins do already have 91 players, including the international player Bayron Matos. Again, that's per CK, also on OnlyFins. So somebody's going to get the cut, probably in UDFA. That's my guess. So, but it's clear that with Marcus Maye joining the crew, it seems like we've been talking all this time about Justin Simmons and Quandre Diggs as potential guys that could join the Miami Dolphins secondary. It looks like if you're looking for another veteran safety, it looks like Marcus Maye is going to be filling that role. And I don't think we're going to have to worry quite as much about his health issues, considering that if you're looking at the Jets and you're looking at the Saints, they were looking at him much more as a potential starter type caliber player. In Miami, he's going to have to be a support player because you obviously have Javon Holland who's starting. Jordan Poyer is still there. And there are other players on this team who are going to be pushing for a spot. Nick Needham is cross-training at corner and safety. He might have a thing to say about how much Marcus Maye gets as far as playing time is concerned. So I want to hear your thoughts, Eric. How much do you know about Marcus Maye?
Yeah, so I think Marcus Maye is actually, like you mentioned, still a guy with a ton of talent, really good cover safety. His biggest issues, as you've highlighted, have really been availability. I do think that maybe going after a guy like Marcus Maye, who, in comparison at least, might be looked at as maybe a lower cost option on the market versus a Quandre Diggs or Justin Simmons, maybe points to the Dolphins saving up some flexibility to potentially, let's say, rework a Tyreek deal so that he makes more money this year. And I'm sure that, there will be implications of that once we get the final numbers coming in. But the other thing that I wanted to highlight here about Marcus Maye when it comes to his injury concerns is the Jets and the Saints are both teams that play their home games on turf as opposed to natural grass. So not only is Marcus Maye going to be a guy who, is maybe playing less snaps than he has been normally, considering he is a guy who has started every single game he has appeared in his career, to now he's going to be playing on a much more forgiving surface for a majority of his games in Miami than he was in New Orleans, in the Dome, and then obviously the storied MetLife turf that we all know and don't particularly love up in the Meadowlands there. So I think Marcus Maye gives them a really nice trio at safety between Javon Holland and Jordan Poyer. I think getting another coverage safety like a Marcus Maye kind of balances things out, and it allows Poyer to kind of do what he does a little bit better and kind of play that box role. Potentially when they do have those three safety sets out there, it just seems like a really smart, intuitive move. He's a guy that when he has been on the field, he's been productive. So I think that it's a solid addition to the Dolphins defense for sure.
If he plays. And that's the thing about it, right? Because I know I just talked about the injury concerns and how I don't think it's a big deal, but you have to admit, and I think everybody will admit this, Chris Grier tends to find a lot of bargain level players who are supposedly really good, just basing it off the fact that they may or may not actually be available, which I guess if you're
you're saying Marcus may or may not be available.
I hear the Fozzie Bear in the background, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and just, like I said, I personally feel like Chris Grier's a high roll. He's a high stakes roller. Okay. This is the guy who will go out of his way to make incredible trades out of nowhere. He'll be the kind of guy who will take a risk on a player and just cross your fingers that he's going to be available to play. Isaiah Wynn is a perfect example. Teron Armstead, another great example. Just guys who have a tendency to end up getting hurt, so you can have them at a discount. And if they play and if they work out and if they manage to stay healthy, it works out phenomenally for Miami. David Long Jr., another perfect example. His injury concerns, the Tennessee Titans people were like, yeah, he's great if he's ever there. And David Long didn't really miss all that much time last season. So, yeah, he was pretty good for Miami, and he was there. So, but again, we're basically rolling the dice and saying, oh, David Long will be there again this year. We're doing the same thing now with Marcus Maye. We're doing the same thing again with Isaiah Wynn. They brought him back another year. Teron Armstead, same thing. So you have all these players who are injury concerns. They can be had at a discount. And on the one hand, it sounds great on paper. If it works, it's a genius move. If it doesn't, we're going to have to pray that a lot of these young guys end up being a lot better than we think that they will be, at least early on in their careers. Guys like one of the safeties they drafted this year, I can't remember the guy, Patrick McMorris. Like, think about that. Like, what happens if Marcus Maye ends up not being available? Well, then you check in on Nick Needham. Okay, so what happens if Nick Needham goes down? Because Nick Needham already tore his Achilles once. We don't know if we hope that he's the same guy that he was before he got hurt, and that he's still that versatile, do-it-all kind of guy that, if there's only one thing that I can give Brian Flores credit for while he was here, it was finding Nick Needham and believing in Nick Needham and making Nick Needham work. Because I think you and me and everybody else who watched him looked at Nick Needham in training camp, in preseason, and said, this guy's awful. Like, he's getting burned every other play. Like, this guy can't play. And yet Brian Flores saw something in him and said, you're going to stick around and I'm going to make it work. And he did. So I can give Brian Flores credit for that one thing, finding Nick Needham. We don't know if he's that same Nick Needham after the Achilles injury. We're praying that he is, but we are really putting on a show here saying that we're going to have faith that our often injured guys are not going to be injured anymore. So with that in mind, we'll address Cap for Like's comment, saying that he just asking how much cap space Miami actually has left. They just got into a heated and confusing debate on the spaces. How can we have less than $20 million after the Xavier Howard relief? All right, so keep in mind Xavier Howard's relief, give or take, was about $18 million. Miami had maybe $1 million, $2 million left before the relief came in. But also keep in mind that the Miami Dolphins have been signing their draft picks. They've just signed Patrick Paul officially, so that contract is done. They actually that announcement was made not too long ago. In fact, earlier today. The Marcus Maye signing still hasn't been made official, so there's going to be money going towards that. And again, keep in mind, I think the only one left is Chop Robinson. I don't think he has signed his contract yet. Have we gotten through to him yet? I don't think we have.
I don't believe so.
No, so we didn't get an announcement on him. So again, there's money that is going to be allocated to these rookies, and eventually we're going to have the numbers on those. So that money ends up going towards that extra cap space. And again, the Marcus Maye money is going to be into it as well. Even with all that in mind, there is a distinct possibility, once again, that even if Miami does have, let's say they have around $15 million, right? Okay, they still have $15 million to play with. Chris Grier may now, they signed Marcus Maye. I really don't think, and I hate the fact that we're even going here. I really don't think the Dolphins are looking at guard and saying it's a high priority. I would love for them to sign a guy like Greg Van Roten. I don't think they're going to. I was surprised. Yesterday, I was with the Inside Leverage guys. Talked about this. Said that I don't think the Dolphins are particularly interested. They said that they're not actively looking. From what I understand, and this is, I think I read a report on this about why the Dolphins are signing Marcus Maye. And I think it has something to do with the fact that Marcus Maye wanted to come to Miami. Like, he made it a point to say he wanted to come to Miami. Now, I would have to go back and try to find that report, but I feel like I remember reading that. I don't remember which article it was that said it. I have to find it. But if that is true,
I believe Ian Rappaport, when he reported it, had mentioned that Marcus Maye chose Miami because he liked the roster and believed that they were a Super Bowl contender.
Okay, so if that's the case, then that's great for Miami. They got a really good safety at a cheap price, I would assume, because this is what Chris Grier does. We talked about this, is that he's not going to go out of his way to go get a veteran that he feels like is the missing piece, as it were. But if a player presents himself and basically says, I want to join your team and I'll take a discount to do it. I love how one of the articles on Google is wording this. This is from Sports Illustrated, right? Baltimore Ravens lose defensive back candidate to the Dolphins. This is from John Alfano on Ravens Country, Fan Nation. So it's the fan aspect of Sports Illustrated, but I digress. I love how that's one of the first headlines that have show up on Google. Baltimore Ravens lose defensive back to the Dolphins, which tells me that a lot of Baltimore Ravens fans, maybe even analysts, were looking at Marcus Maye and saying, you know what, this is a guy that would fit really well in the system. And Marcus Maye took one look at Baltimore and took one look at Miami and said, you know what, I choose Miami. Now, we can have an argument about whether that was because it was about the weather or maybe they just like Anthony Weaver better than the other guy. That's fine. Marcus Maye chose Miami. And I would assume if he chose Miami and wanted to come that badly, is because he's going to be taking a hometown discount. I'm sure that Chris Grier looked him in the eye and said, listen, the same way he did Jordan Poyer last season, and Poyer decided to go back to Buffalo. He signed with Miami this year. But I'm sure that Chris Grier looked at Marcus Maye and said, listen, you want to be here? I would love to have you here, but we're on a budget. How much are you willing to take? You want this much? And if Marcus Maye said, sure, okay. So to answer Cap for Life's question, I think that that's probably the reason why they have less than 20 million. It's just other players that are having money allocated to them. Eric, do you have any thoughts on that before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, according to Spotrac, it looks like they're at about 18.5 million left over. And just to echo your sentiments, I don't think that they're going to be looking at guards. At least not. Listen, if anything, if they add offensive linemen to the mix, they're going to add tackles that they believe that they can convert to guards, because that's very, very clearly what they have. That's their stated, MO at the offensive line at this point. They want to get guys that are athletic enough to play tackle, and ideally mean enough and physical enough to play guard. So if they were to add anything along the offensive line, I think they add more tackles, and then hope to potentially move those guys inside the guard. But I don't think any of that movement will come until at least training camp at this point. Offensive line is one of those markets that once you pass probably May, June, you don't hear anything until about August, when guys start dropping, injuries start happening at camp. So I would not expect to see any offensive line moves down the pipe, at least until training camp. And even then, it's a question, really.
Yeah. Speaking of offensive line help, so minicamp is coming around. Actually, before we get into offensive line, did you see that the Jets are having some drama over there with Hassan Reddick? Or Aaron Rodgers deciding that, nah, I'm not going to go to minicamp. I'm not interested in minicamp. And mind you, that's the mandatory one. It's not the, I volunteer to come, but I may not come because, I don't have to. No, this is mandatory minicamp. This is, you better get your tail in here because you are going to be fined if you don't show up. And Aaron Rodgers says, nah, I don't really feel like it. And it's funny because a buddy of mine who has been on the show before, Chad Ronnebaum, we have our own little group chat with a bunch of friends. He was actually saying that he watched the Pat McAfee show. Everybody knows how friendly McAfee and Rodgers are. AJ Hawk too. They have no idea where Aaron Rodgers is right now. No, Aaron Rodgers has not spoken to anybody. He could be somewhere in the Himalayas, and we have no clue. So very interesting that Aaron Rodgers. Right. So for people talking about, Tua might hold out, like we know why. If and again, I keep saying this, I really don't think he's going to. But if for whatever ungodly reason, Tua decided I'm not going to show up because I'm protesting the fact I haven't signed a new contract yet, which he's not going to do. I would be shocked if he did that. Even if he did that, we would know why. It's because he wants his money. Okay, sure. Got it. Understood. I don't like it, but I understand. What is Aaron Rodgers' excuse? He already got paid. What is he not showing up for? Just because he doesn't feel like it? Because he's bored? Like, that sounds to me like a quarterback who is not committed to his football team. And even if he does show up later down the line, he basically does not respect his team enough. He doesn't care enough. What is he even playing for anymore? Like, he had to convince himself to go to New York in the first place. Was it just to cash in one last check and say, I'm going to take this money and run to the bank? If that's the case, then I guess that's so Jets. I'm so sorry for you guys. that Aaron Rodgers just played you like fools? I don't know what to tell you, man. It just feels like the Aaron Rodgers experiment has gone about as poorly as it could for the New York Jets.
It's funny. This whole thing really, this tenure with the Jets really feels like Aaron Rodgers kind of pulling a prank to see just how much he can get away with just by being Aaron Rodgers. Because it's getting really wacky at this point. I mean, you have the guy going to the Amazon with the ayahuasca and flirting with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be his VP candidate. It's just one thing after another with Rodgers at this point. I think personally, if he plays all of last year and it doesn't go well, I think he would have retired. If I'm being serious, I think the only reason why he's playing this year is he does not want the last memory of his career to be his Achilles, being torn on the fourth play of the season in his first year in New York. I think that's kind of the only reason why he decided to come back, was because when you are as good of a player as Aaron Rodgers was, and probably to an extent still could be, there's a certain level of arrogance that you have that says, you know what, I can still be Superman, I can still come back, and I can still do this. And that same arrogance is probably one of the reasons why he's not at this mandatory camp, because he can just say, I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'm 41 years old. What can this offense show me that I haven't already seen?
Oh, Aaron cut out, but he's back now. Hello, sir.
Oh, I cut out during that entire ramble. I went
not the entire ramble, just briefly, like 2 seconds ago. You just went bloop, and then you came back.
Okay,
like the whole feed just went.
Oh wow.
Yep. But you're back now.
So to make a long story short, it's that same level of arrogance that drives him to come back. That's probably the reason why he says, I'm 41 years old. I've seen every offense there is to see in the NFL. I don't need to be here. I don't need to do this. I am Aaron Rodgers. So that's probably what's happening over there. The Jets just feel like a train wreck waiting to happen. They feel a lot like the 2011 Dream Team Eagles, if you'll remember, when they were put together and everybody was hemming and hawing about how they're going to be the next greatest team, only to fail pretty spectacularly. This team feels a lot like that to me.
What are the chances that this is all just one bizarre social experiment by Aaron Rodgers? Like you said, he's just waiting to see who's finally going to call him on it and say, you're being full of crap. Like, who's willing to stand up to Aaron Rodgers? Like, he's just waiting for that moment. Like, he's waiting for somebody to say, hey, I don't care who you are, get your tail in here. I don't know.
It's not going to be Robert Saleh. I don't think.
Definitely not. Definitely not. I think Robert Saleh is probably fearing for his job at this point. Like, he sees Aaron Rodgers
basically eating out. Is realistically, he's chance at relevance this year, and that's a scary for the New York Jets.
Yeah, it's I personally am wondering, like, maybe Aaron Rodgers is going to go he's going to go full circle. Like, he's going to play for the Jets one year, and then right as he's getting ready to retire, he'll come back one more time, and he'll go to the Minnesota Vikings. What do you think of that theory? Just for funsies. Like, he's like, I really stepped in the footsteps of Brett Favre. Like, I did everything Brett Favre did, and I did everything Brett Favre did better. Like, honestly, I could see that. I could see that for Aaron Rodgers, basically be like, I did everything that my predecessor did, but I did it better, including go to the Jets and the Vikings.
The JJ McCarthy thing probably stops that from ever happening at this point.
We know that for sure, though.
But Aaron Rodgers is one of the few guys that would, like, it absolutely is not beyond Aaron Rodgers to plan something like that out just because he feels like it. or because he thinks he can.
So I feel sorry for Jets fans in a certain way. I don't feel sorry for the season. I'm glad if Aaron Rodgers, even if he does play at this point, then I really don't think he's going to be that guy anymore. He's not going to be the Aaron Rodgers of old. I'm so sorry. If he is, I'll be, again, shocked. Now, back to the discussion that I was going to get into before I went on this long Jets diatribe. Offensive line help. Doesn't look like Miami's going to go for Greg Van Roten. Doesn't look like Miami's looking to actually find a new starter. They're just, if anything, they'll find just offhand bits and pieces here and there to kind of round out the depth of the line. But even then, I think they're satisfied with that too. Speaking of which, mandatory minicamp, again, it's coming up soon. And one of the things that we talked about on Inside Leverage was that the Miami Dolphins have a bunch of players that need to be worked on. Mandatory minicamp in many ways is training camp light. There's a lot of opportunity to learn the fundamentals. There's a lot of opportunity to learn the basics, learn the offense, learn the defense if you're a defensive player. One of the players that I personally am concerned about, I'm going to get into in just a second, but Eric, as minicamp rolls around, I want to hear from you first this time. What are you looking for? Who are you watching the most? Because who do you want to hear about as far as minicamp is concerned?
I think more than anything, I want to hear about a position group, I think, instead of one particular player. I want to see who's going to emerge as the second guy next to Zach Sealer along the defensive line. Whether it's Jonathan Harris, whether it's Tyler Tart, whether it's Benito Jones, I need to know who is going to be the other guy along the interior, because at a lot of the other positions on the field, I kind of trust at least the guys that are penciled in to be the starters. That feels like the one position that I'm really like, man, that could actually be pretty weak for the Dolphins is whoever the second defensive lineman is alongside Zach Sealer. So that's a position group that I'm going to be watching. Additionally, I do think, I'm not certain Odell Beckham Jr. just walks into that number 3 role at wide receiver. I think it's going to be more competitive than a lot of people think, between Taj Washington, between Malik Washington, between Odell, and even, yes, I will continue to bring his name up, Eric Ezukanma. Defensive line and wide receiver 3 for me are going to be those two positions that.
And Eric disappeared again. I think he's having some connection issues while he's at his place of hiding, I guess you could say. I'm sure he'll be back in just a moment. So to his point, once again, to recap, talking about the offensive line group and the wide receiver group as a whole, he's looking at the wide receiver position and basically saying, welcome back, Eric. You popped out again, but now you're back.
Sorry about that.
Nope, that's fine. It's fine. I'm basically recapping what you said. So just to go into what my thought process is, you looking at position groups, I can understand that. For me, I'm always all about the individual. I'm looking at players that I want to see get better because I feel like that their improvement could hinge on Miami's ability to be good in the future, or even to some extent, the now.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Oh, do you now? I'm gonna.
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead. Tell me.
Is it Cam Smith?
No.
No?
Although that's a good idea. That's a good candidate. I should probably talk about him, but no, he's not. He's not the one on my list. I basically I ranted about him early on during the draft process, as soon as the Dolphins drafted him, and is somebody who, once again, my issue with him is not that I don't think he's talented. My issue with him is he doesn't do anything for Miami right now, and I do mean nothing. I'm not talking about Chop. I'm talking about Patrick Paul. Patrick Paul, I need to see some improvement from him, because from early on in OTAs, and OTAs is the underwear Olympics, right? That's when it doesn't matter. Nobody's hitting each other. Who cares? It's not a big deal. For guys who are learning how to play the position, who are learning the offense, it is a big deal. For rookies, OTAs, I do believe, matter, because that is your best opportunity to be in the classroom, to polish up your basics, to be able to learn what it takes to play the position. And early on, again, take it for what it is. It's a grain of salt if you want. Omar Kelly, I believe he said that, listen, for all of Patrick Paul's physical prowess, he's still painfully raw. This guy does not know how to properly play offensive line. And it's pitiful that nobody took him aside in college and didn't try to actually fix his issues. That's what it looks like. The way that he plays the game, he's so physically talented that he's worthy of a second-round draft pick just based on that alone. But he doesn't know how to play the position properly. I made the comparison during Inside Leverage when I was on with them last night. Patrick Paul is like Austin Jackson in the sense, I'm not talking about I'm not trying to make an accusation that he's not intelligent. He's very intelligent. He's very determined to get better. I appreciate that about him, and I'm rooting for him, obviously, not just as a Dolphins player, but anybody who's willing to work hard and be the best that they can be at their craft. I respect people like that. But again, that doesn't change the fact that this is an NFL football team. This is business. I need to see improvement. I need to see you get better. And for Patrick Paul, his footwork is bad. His hand placement is bad. His spacing is bad. Everything that he does needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. And I don't expect Patrick Paul to play this season. If he does, something went horribly wrong. I understand that. But if you are expected to be the successor to Teron Armstead, and by the way, Kendall Lamb is not going to be available next year either because he said this is his last dance too. That means that Miami is basically putting all their chips in the middle to say that Patrick Paul in 2025 is going to be good enough to be able to run the show in lieu of Teron Armstead and Kendall Lamb, both of which could very conceivably retire. And in Armstead's case, even if he doesn't retire, it's very likely he's released just to save cash. So I need to see some improvement from him. I need to see something. I don't need to see everything get better at once. If we hear that his footwork is still bad, but he's getting better with his hands, I can live with that. If you say that his hands are still terrible, but he's getting better with his footwork, I can live with that. I cannot hear that Patrick Paul is not getting any better, that he still looks terrible. I can't do it because I need something to make me believe that it's not going to take 3 years or 4 years for Austin, just like with Austin Jackson, where in the first 14 plays of the 2023 season, or 22, it looks like you got a phone call coming. Austin Jackson, again, perfect example. First 14 plays of the 2022 season, he looked great. He looked awesome. Fantastic. Good for Austin Jackson. He gets injured after those 14 plays. He doesn't come back until several weeks later. And he looks terrible. Some people blame it on the injuries. It's not about the injuries for me because he came back and he didn't get any better after that. Austin Jackson had basically looked like he had forgotten everything that he had learned early on in the season when he first started playing well in those 14 plays, which begs the question, what was Austin Jackson doing? Why did he have to be retutored all over again? And then finally Butch Berry showed up and Austin Jackson miraculously became good. I'm not even going to say great. I sometimes, for me, in some cases, good is even a little hard to say only because I have to put the asterisk of Tua got the ball out in less than 2 seconds, and that helps Austin Jackson look a lot better because there's not as much pressure showing up because they can't get to him in time. So with Austin Jackson case, again, it took 4 seasons for him to get good. Patrick Paul is the choice. He is the protege. He is the guy that they are counting on to be the left tackle of the future. I need to see improvement from him. So I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
So I do have just a couple things. The first thing is, if you'll recall, I believe Austin Jackson was drafted probably a few months removed after, I believe, doing a bone marrow transplant. So there was probably more physical developing that had to be done with Austin Jackson than has to be done with a guy like Patrick Paul, who I believe is physically, like, he's the polished package. The second thing that I'll say is, while I agree that he's extremely raw, I wouldn't put a lot of stock into OTAs at that position specifically. Now, there are certain positions that I think, yes, you have to be, you need to have a really good grasp of the playbook. And if a guy's not understanding concepts, if you have a linebacker or a safety who doesn't understand where he needs to be in this coverage alignment, that's a big issue. Offensive line, because of the fact that, you can't really see the contact, happening with these guys. It's a little bit less indicative, I think, of what they're going to look like in camp and in games. My big thing there is that's nothing we didn't already know about Patrick Paul. Like, we knew the footwork needed work. We knew the hand placement needs work. I'm going to reserve my judgment there until training camp, when I can see him actually get his hands on guys, because you know why that's the reason why nobody ever pulled him aside when he was at Houston. Was he was just so big and so strong that once he got his hands on guys, they weren't getting to the quarterback. Now, obviously that doesn't play as well at the pro level, because the guys that he's going up against are better athletes. But I still want to see him play, some semblance of real football before I make that judgment, because he plays a position that is, a lot more. I'm not to say that it's not mental at all, but it is a lot more physical than mental, along the offensive line. So
I disagree with that, though. That's the thing. I disagree. Fundamentally, I disagree, because if you are an offensive lineman, being a good offensive lineman is so predicated not just on your physical bulk. Obviously, bulk matters. You have to be a big dude. Solomon Kinley was a monster. He was enormous. He did nothing for Miami because his hand placement was awful. Footwork was awful. He could bulldoze guys all day long, but he doesn't have the technique. And that led to him having a very short career, unfortunately, because does Solomon Kinley even have a team right now? I don't think he does. So
I don't believe so.
Right. So you can be a road grader. You can be the biggest, bulkiest guy out there. Like Lester Cotton's a perfect example. He can bulldoze guys all day long. He's the worst offensive lineman on the team. Like, this is a guy where I'm like, why is Lester Cotton still here? Is it just because the Miami Dolphins want to keep him around because they owe him? Does thanks for coming in when we were in an emergency, we'll keep you around until we finally cut you because you don't fit what we need? Lester Cotton, guys like him, like he's big, he's bruising, he's imposing, and Patrick Paul does all those things too.
He's not just imposing, and maybe I wasn't clear enough there. It's not just that he's really big and strong. It's that he's not only is he big and strong, but he's agile and he's fleet of foot and he's got really long arms, which is probably the one thing that I would say is the most enticing thing about him, because the length can absolutely make up for some deficiencies in technique. Maybe not the to the degree to which Patrick Paul has those deficiencies, but having that extra length specifically at that tackle position, I don't necessarily think it's an apples to apples comparison with a guy like Solomon Kinley.
Okay, I'll go ahead and I'll agree to that. That using Solomon Kinley as an example, a little bit different because Patrick Paul plays a different position. But in many ways, I feel like the fact that he does play tackle makes the fact that he needs his footwork and his hand placement to be on point even more important. Because at tackle specifically, technique is so crucial. Look at Teron Armstead. Patrick Paul is meant to be the successor to Teron Armstead. Armstead is a technician at the position. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the strongest guy. He's big and strong. Don't get me wrong. But he beats guys because he just knows how to outsmart these dudes. Offensive line requires so much brain power that does not ever get mentioned, because all you ever see is bodies banging into each other. And it's only when you really slow down the tape and you just kind of watch it in replay that the actual technician of the position actually starts to show itself. Armstead is a master at his craft. And that's why he's able to tutor other players, that he's able to teach other players and show them his tricks and say, listen, when you get into this situation right here, try doing this. And instead of doing what you're normally doing, this actually might work better for you because now the other player has to respond to you by doing this. So that's the sort of thing that I'm talking about here. And Armstead, to his credit, he's never been shy about helping guys. He's helped Austin Jackson a lot, I'm sure. But now we have to do it all over again with Patrick Paul. And to Patrick Paul, even, again, it's not even that he has some things that he's learned, but he just has to tweak a few things to get better. Again, he has to learn the position all over again. I don't know if that's enough time, one season, for him to get to that point. I just don't.
I do think that with the unique athletic profile that he has, he can at least get to a point where his physical gifts can overcome, any slight deficiencies or any deficiencies that he has after a year. Because if he goes from, let's say he goes from really bad technique wise to just below average to slightly below average technique wise, with his physical profile is more like he's like Andrew Whitworth level big. And if you have a guy that's even, he doesn't have to be a finished product year two. I don't think he will be a finished product year two, but he has to be good enough. And I think that they can get him to a point to where he's good enough year two to step in and start right away. Does that mean that's what he's going to be for at the end of his career? No, I think he's going to be a lot better year 3, year 4 down the line. But I do think they can get him to a point where you look at it and you're like, okay, maybe it's not perfect, but this is good enough.
All right. We'll just have to see what happens with him. Again, I personally think that in his case, OTAs and minicamp are important just because, again, it's a good time. It's a good time to just get basic fundamentals going without having bodies banging into you. And I get that that's the important part when it comes to offensive line. But first, you have to walk before you can run. All right. Got about 18 minutes left. Maybe we'll go a little bit shorter this show, but let's go ahead and see what else is going on in the world of Fins Nation. So some of the things being talked about right now, let's take a look at OnlyFins as a perfect example, right? So, apparently Joe Montana recently said that Dan Marino is the best quarterback to ever play football. So that's interesting news. Very interesting that he says that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that that's surprising, really. I think we can all admit, like, in terms of pure arm talent, Dan Marino is probably absolutely best quarterback to ever play. Did he have everything around him that he always needed? No. And unfortunately, that was kind of the bugaboo there for him. But I don't think that's surprising at all to hear Joe Montana say something like that, especially about a guy that he had to see kind of up close and personal. And I'm sure Joe Montana had a massive appreciation for his situation. With the organization that he was with the 49ers. Not that the Dolphins were a train wreck of an organization at the time. They just couldn't put it all together, at the same time with Marino.
All right. And also here we can piss off the listeners with this last comment. Chris Sims, Chris Sims, right? Eric, I'm pretty sure.
Wasn't he a backup quarterback once upon a time?
Yeah, he was, unlike his father. So we'll go ahead and we'll get into this real quick. Chris Sims just put out his annual top 40 countdown for quarterbacks. You ready for this list, my friend?
Yes. Let's run through it.
Okay, so number 40 is Jarrett Stidham. So he's the worst of this bunch here. Okay, he's the Denver Broncos, right? Gardner Minshew is number 39 for the Raiders. Okay. Kenny Pickett, number 38 with the Eagles as a backup.
No complaints so far.
And funny thing, he actually has these little categories that he has for everybody. So these 3 are considered backup plus. Then you have the throwbacks. Number 37 is Joe Flacco with the Colts as a along with Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson's in there somewhere. I'll get into him in a minute. But Joe Flacco's number 37. Jacoby Brissett back with the Patriots. He is number 36. And then you have, these next 4 are considered the young and the reckless. Number 35 with the Cleveland Browns, Jameis Winston. You have Bryce Young at number 34 with the Panthers.
Mhm.
Number 33, Sam Darnold with the Minnesota Vikings. And now we get into the starting caliber guys because 32 teams, 32 quarterbacks. Of the worst of the bunch, number 32 is Anthony Richardson with the Colts. Okay. He hasn't done much yet. Number 31 is the for-hire quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. So that's interesting.
No comment.
Yeah. Right, and here we go. The rookies, the ready rookies. Apparently, all these guys are better than Ryan Tannehill in Chris Sims' mind. You have J.J. McCarthy with the Vikings, Bo Nix with the Broncos, Jaden Daniels with the Commanders, Michael Penix Jr. with the Falcons, and Will Levis with the Titans. I think Jaden Daniels should be higher than Michael Penix. That's just me.
I think Jaden Daniels should be higher up on this list, period, than even maybe 2 or 3 names that I see ahead of him right now.
Oh, are you actually reading it now too?
I am reading along with you.
Okay, so yeah, here's one. Justin Fields with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Justin Fields, man. He's a running back. He doesn't throw, man. He's a running back. Like, people make that accusation about Lamar Jackson. That's a dumb thing to say. Justin Fields really is. He really is.
Chris Sims really, really loves physically gifted quarterbacks that are not particularly adept at playing the position of quarterback. I'm starting to notice that theme.
I don't know, because honestly, here's something for you. Because you're reading it too. Deshaun Watson is number 24 with the Browns, and I'm glad. I don't even know why Watson's on this list. He's been awful. Daniel Jones with the Giants is on this list. And honestly, as bad as Justin Fields has been as a quarterback, truthfully, just based on his playmaking alone, I'd put Justin Fields over Daniel Jones.
I mean, honestly, but you can make a case. Daniel Jones is maybe like 80% of the runner that Justin Fields is. He's a good runner. He's good running the football.
He kind of looks like a baby giraffe, like Mike Gesicki. That's
Daniel Jones is like a poor man's version of Miami Dolphins Ryan Tannehill.
Poor man's version of Ryan Tannehill with the Dolphins. Okay,
yes.
I mean, at that point, I'd still have Ryan Tannehill over Daniel Jones, but that's just me. So
probably fair play.
Okay. Derek Carr, number 22. Russell Wilson, number 21. The chosen one, Caleb Williams, is number 20 before he even plays a snap. That's very interesting. And here we go. Now is when we start pissing each other off. Geno Smith is number 19 with the Seahawks. And then, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Number 18 in the whole league, Miami Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa. I don't know why he's so low, other than that Chris Sims doesn't like him. I would put, there's a few guys on this list that I would put Tua over. I would put Tua over Kyler Murray. Easy. He's but just for the sake, I'll keep going down the list. Brock Purdy's number 17. If you want to put Purdy over Tua right now, whatever. Purdy's had more success from as far as a playoff standpoint than Tua has, obviously, at this point. So if that is what your definition of success is, fine. Put Purdy over Tua if it makes you happy. But Tua's been a much better quarterback numbers-wise than Brock Purdy. Then you have Kyler Murray at number 16. I'd put Purdy and Tua over Kyler Murray. And then you have number 15, Baker Mayfield. I'd put Tua and Purdy over Baker Mayfield. Easy. And then this is the funny, first of all, he put Aaron Rodgers, not Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers or Roders. So apparently on top of being a terrible quarterback evaluator, Chris Sims also does not know how to spell.
I don't know. Maybe Aaron Rodgers just decided to change his name.
Listen,
in the
I don't want
midst
to.
of the offseason, as he's gone missing, he comes back as Aaron Rodgers.
I listen. The king of changing names is still out there looking for a new team. What is it? Robbie Anderson, then Chosen Anderson, then Chosen, and Robbie Chosen, and like you give yourself a tongue twister trying to keep up with this. But anyway, Aaron Rodgers at number 14. Okay, I get honestly, again, right now at this stage in his career, I'd put Tua over Aaron Rodgers. Jordan Love at 13. Okay, everybody fell in love with Jordan Love's just explosive coming onto the scene last season. You want to put him at 13? Fine, I don't really have an issue with that. Kirk Cousins, number 12. This is the funny one for me. This really gets me. Trevor Lawrence is number 11. Like Trevor Lawrence? First of all, Tua is better than him. So is Brock Purdy. I'd say Jordan Love is better than Trevor Lawrence at this point.
Yeah,
Kirk
absolutely.
Cousins is better than Trevor Lawrence at this point. Like you could even make the argument that Baker might actually be better than Trevor Lawrence at this point, but I'm not going to make that argument right now. Like, in fact, there are probably a couple of people on this other list on the other side that I'd put over Trevor Lawrence at this point in their careers. Just what has Trevor Lawrence done other than be tall, blonde, and blue-eyed and be the heartthrob of all teenage girls everywhere? What has he done?
Not much. It's weird. Usually, pundits are very quickly to kind of throw guys to the side, but it just feels like the NFL world cannot quit Trevor Lawrence. And I kind of get it because like every once in a while he'll make a throw that you're like, man, that's Trevor Lawrence. But then
Tua makes those throws on the regular.
He makes another. I'm talking like physically, like on the run, like wow throws kind of things.
Okay.
Tua makes wow throws just in a different way. But he also makes really boneheaded decisions way too often. I mean, really, I'm not going to go that far.
Yeah. So we've already identified as Tua being better than Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, Trevor Lawrence. Easy.
I'd have him over Rodgers at this point.
Aaron Rodgers, that's number 4. So let's keep going down the list. You want to make the argument Jordan Love and Kirk Cousins are better? You can try to make that argument if you want.
Cousins is a weird one to me too because he's another guy coming off an Achilles. I mean, and for as much talk of Tyreek Hill having made Tua, you can make that argument 1.5 times over for Justin Jefferson with Kirk Cousins.
Oh yeah, Justin Jefferson was huge for Kirk Cousins. All right, so let's keep going. Jared Goff. I mean, I got to give credit to Goff for playing well, but again, I keep making this point. 2 years ago, it was not that long ago. 2 years ago, Eric, we were literally laughing at Jared Goff and how bad he was playing because we were smoking him in the Lions so badly. And all of a sudden,
the Rams.
Was it the Rams? I thought
that was when he was with the Rams. The game against the Lions was actually pretty fun back and forth offensively.
Was it Stafford still? I thought for sure he had already left. I thought for sure Goff had already started.
No. They played the Rams and they blitzed Jared Goff into oblivion, and he turned the ball over like 4 or 5 times.
Let me see something.
This was when Brian Flores was still coaching.
Was it that long ago?
Yeah, I think it might have been Tua's first start.
Well, they still kicked their butts. But anyway, I'm just trying to look it up here. When did he finally join? Because now I feel like I'm getting. No, I was right. 2021, the Detroit Lions. He was with the Lions in 2022.
2022 or 2021?
Both.
And they played the Lions both years there?
Where were the Dolphins? What was the Dolphins schedule? Hold on. Dolphins schedule 2022. Let's see.
This, I gotta say, this is riveting podcast material right now.
Okay, yeah, no, look, here it is. Let's see. Tua played 20. He went. The Dolphins beat the Lions, so he went 29 of 36 for 382 and 3 touchdowns. I'll give Goff credit. Okay, he went 27 for 37, 321 yards and 1 touchdown. But even then, there was something there with Jared Goff that it was just like for all the yards that he was making them, it still wasn't doing a whole lot for them. Like most of the stuff that was going on with the Lions was much more about finding other ways to score. It wasn't through Jared Goff specifically. So
right,
even then,
that was God, I don't even. That was the Josh Boyer bend but don't break kind of stiffen up in the red zone defense.
yeah, that was a bunch of baloney. But anyway, so even then, and even then, Tua still beat him. So there you go. Head to head, Tua beats Jared Goff. So I would go ahead and put Jared Goff underneath Tua. That's just me. We'll keep going here. Jalen Hurts is number 9. Okay, can't argue with Jalen Hurts. He's done phenomenal. Dak Prescott. I'd put Hurts over Prescott.
I'd put Tua over Prescott. I don't think that's particularly difficult either.
Prescott can extend plays, and he's bigger and bulkier. I mean, if you want to make, I can see people arguing that Prescott is better overall than Tua. I think Tua
I don't know, man. We saw the Cowboys just last year. We saw them, and they weren't playing the Dolphins defense when the Dolphins defense was fully healthy and rolling. They were playing a banged up Dolphins defense at that point at the end of the year, and I was thoroughly underwhelmed by Dak.
Well, either way, I'd put Hurts over Prescott. Is that fair to say?
Oh, for sure.
Okay. CJ Stroud is number 7. Okay, fine. Justin Herbert is still number 6 in the league. I'd put Hurts over Prescott without even blinking. That's not even hard for me to say. Hurts belongs over Justin Herbert at this point in their careers. Matthew Stafford is number 5. I'd put CJ Stroud and Jalen Hurts over Matt Stafford.
Yeah.
The old guard needs Jalen Hurts plays a lot better than people are giving him credit for. So I don't like Herbert. I don't like Stafford over Hurts. And in Tua's case specifically, Tua's better than Justin Herbert. Don't give me that crap. I'm over this whole nonsense about whether the Dolphins should have drafted Herbert or whether they should have drafted Tua or not. As far as what they've accomplished, Tua is above and beyond what Justin Herbert has done. It's just that, again, Justin Herbert's blonde, blue-eyed, and he's like the heartthrob of all teenage girls everywhere. Like, again, it's the good-looking guys that somehow make it high on Chris Sims' list. I wonder if there's a correlation. Anyway. I know. I'm saying bad things. So finally, we'll get to the top 4: Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. Any of those 4 guys are interchangeable at this point. Well,
no.
It's
Patrick Mahomes by himself, gap, and then the rest.
Okay, fine. I apologize. Mahomes is number 1. Clearly, I didn't. So the 3 guys, Allen, Burrow, Jackson, are interchangeable.
What's going to be interesting to me? I am very intrigued to see what this list is going to look like heading into 2025. After we see Josh Allen without Stephon Diggs. Not to say that I think he's going to fall precipitously.
I think it's going to say the same thing.
But we might be looking at him as maybe back half of the top 10 rather than unquestionably top 4.
No, I think he'll be in the top 4. They don't like messing with their rankings very much, Eric. In fact, the fact that Joe Burrow is still so just casually number 3, Joe Burrow hasn't played that much, if you really think about it. He really hasn't. Like, for all the talk about how much time Tua has missed, Joe Burrow's missed a lot of time too. So why does he get to be number 3? Because he made it to a Super Bowl? Jared Goff made it to a Super Bowl.
True. I guess with Burrow, it's there's also maybe the added although Jared Goff has kind of done the same thing with Detroit in taking, franchises that are historical kind of losing franchises and taking them, to heights kind of
Stafford
unseen.
could have done the same thing, bro. That's not a Jared Goff thing. I think that's just a Dan Campbell teaching these guys how to play football thing.
No, I know. I know. I'm just saying that I think that that's part of why they get the amount of credit that they do. It's part of the narrative there.
Yeah. So anyway, from a Dolphin standpoint, the point is we can rage and be upset that Tua's underneath all these other guys. Like Kyler Murray, wrong. Baker Mayfield, wrong. Aaron Rodgers, wrong. Trevor Lawrence, wrong. Prescott, arguably wrong. Justin Herbert, so wrong. Like based on that alone, let's see how many guys we can knock off this list. So we can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
6.
6,
Confidently 6.
7. So we can, I would say 7 with Justin Herbert. So
okay,
at the worst,
I think at this point with Herbert and Tua, I think it's kind of flip a coin. But
not
yeah,
for me, bro. Justin
depending on the day, give me either one. I'll go with you on this one. I'll say Tua over Herbert.
Not on any day. Eric, here, let me pose this question to you. It's
Yeah.
the fourth quarter, and you need a comeback win. Who are you trusting more, Tua or Justin Herbert in the fourth quarter?
I'm definitely trusting Tua more in the fourth quarter of that kind of game.
Justin Herbert is always good for an interception to end the game because Al literally made a lot of money and they had to remove the prop to make sure that he couldn't win anymore.
It does draw me back to, and pardon me for going off on this tangent here. It's really poetic if you go back to that game. I'm sure you remember the wild card game that Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert played against each other. When I believe it was Trevor Lawrence, basically he threw up all over himself in the first half.
The blonde
ball. And they were getting blown out. And then I believe that the Jaguars, did they end up completing the comeback and winning that game? They just traded halves throwing up on each other.
I do remember
throwing up on themselves
at the Justin Herbertites. So let me double check real quick though. Let's see. Jaguars, Chargers. Yep, Jaguars won with 1 point.
Oh my God.
1 point win. So yeah, because I remember I was watching that game with my father, I think, and I remember seeing that Justin Herbert, like I was laughing at the Herbertites saying, you didn't get the job done.
Yes.
It's like Justin Herbert does what Justin Herbert always does. He just fails in the last moment.
I mean, it was just a perfect microcosm of both guys, and Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert, who I think are actually pretty similar. Herbert maybe being like a better version of Trevor Lawrence.
And that's saying a lot. That says a lot more than anybody realizes it does, Eric. Like saying that Justin Herbert is a better Trevor Lawrence. The fact that Trevor Lawrence is as high on the list as he is, that just speaks volumes.
It certainly does.
All right. We're going to go ahead and call it here. Everybody, thank you all so much for listening. We always appreciate having you guys involved. By the way, 3 Yards Per Carry actually does have a merch store now that you can check out. So once again, you need to go to OnlyFins. You can go to discord.gg/OnlyFins. You can join for $3 a month, and they do have some awesome merchandise that you can check out as well. I'm actually looking at it right now. Really cool stuff. So if you want to be able to join in, get your hands on that. It's actually, it's the... I believe this is the link to it. You can go to https that's onlyfins.printify.me/products. So you'll be able to check that out and be able to get some cool merch in your hands for some new Dolphins stuff. All right. We're going to go ahead. Like I said, we're calling it here. Make sure you go to prizepicks.com. Use the promo code 5. That's FIVE. They will match up to $100 on your deposit when you sign up. And of course, jerseys305.com. If you need some new vintage jerseys to be able to get your hands on so that you can wear your colors in pride, make sure that you go to that jerseys.305 or jersey305.com. Use the promo code 5. Get 10% off your order. We're done here. We'll see you next week. Thank you all so much for joining us.